And this has only to do with bioethics insofar as it literally tries to reject or say farewell to a biological body partly, and sexual ethics insofar as it might consider sexual love and procreation superfluous because the hope of some of these people is that we should live forever ourselves. So this is a transhumanist, so-called, that I'm talking about. And they believe that we'll be able to transcend our human powers. So, you know, our God-given nature, so to speak, will leave behind us. And we become superhumans with totally different powers and, in fact, a totally different kind of existence. Not only will we have non-physical powers that extend, you know, well beyond what we have now, but they're hoping for everlasting life somehow in this world or in the cloud even. So it takes its origin really in a thinking that goes back to the eugenics movement, Galton and Darwin. And the term transhumanism was actually coined by Julian Huxley. He was a brother of Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World. So you can see how it fits into a certain context here. And Julian Huxley, he was actually the president of the Eugenics Society. Now, it has overtones of eugenics insofar as it wants to make humanity new and different and improve us in what they consider ways that would improve us. But unlike the eugenics movement, it's not interested in a state-organized sort of eugenics program. And in fact, it's more interested in improving ourselves than in future generations. So here we have one of the prominent people in the movement, Ray Kurzweil. Is actually one of the most prominent men in Google. And he's one of the inventors of speech recognition, actually. He's very much into AI and computers and that sort of thing. Anyway, he's one of the signatories of this Transhumanist Declaration, which says humanity stands to be profoundly affected by science and technology in the future. We envision the possibility of broadening human potential by overcoming aging, cognitive shortcomings, involuntary suffering, and our confinement to Earth even. By the way, confinement to Earth, even Stephen Hawking was talking about that we might overcome our confinement to Earth. We believe that humanity's potential is still mostly unrealized, and a possible scenario that could lead to wonderful and exceedingly worthwhile enhanced human conditions. So, and these are the last lines. We favor allowing individuals wide personal choice. In other words, that shows that they're not thinking in a sort of a Hitler state-regulated program of improving humanity. Far from it. They speak about technology that might develop to assist memory, concentration, mental energy, and then they speak of life extension therapies, and they speak of reproductive choice, even though, as I said, they are more interested in themselves than in future generations. And of course, insofar as they would decide, you know, for future generations, perhaps with genome editing of embryos, they would contradict themselves insofar as that future generation would have nothing to say about him or herself, how that, you know. And they speak about cryonics procedures and all sorts of other strange things that I'll come to. So, it raises, of course, a number of questions. Are they realistic? And should we welcome this sort of scenario? Or some of the scenarios envisaged, for instance, that we'll fuse with computers. And we might even be mainly computers, or live in the cloud, even transferred to the cloud. But I'll come back to that because literally they equate personality with mind. So is it an awakening of eugenics? I said no, it's a new form. It of course raises question about what sort of society we would live in if we all lived forever here on Earth. Would we all be a lot of oldies? Would we never have any children? Would there be any renewal? What sort of world would it be? Would it stagnate? And if only some of us were to be able to, raise ourselves above the rest of humanity, well, there would be social inequalities unheard of before. So there are lots of questions here. I won't deal with all of them. So, but interestingly, some of them, Nick Bostrom, this fellow, he's professor at Oxford, he is afraid of AI at the same time, artificial intelligence. He was one of the first signatories on the Transhumanist Declaration. But he's actually fearing that AI will take over and might even become aggressive to humanity and make us redundant. He's seriously thinking that. So he's thinking that it may become smarter than ourselves and outsmart us. And he's not alone. Kurzweil, as I spoke about, he's also fearing these sort of things. At the same time, as he's thinking of ways, both of them are thinking of ways of outsmarting AI. But of course, AI has problems. We already have AI weapons, like those drones the Americans have used, for instance, in Afghanistan and other places. And in fact, they are quite dangerous because they're programmed in such a way that they can decide themselves whether they should throw a bomb. So they're not necessarily totally directed from the United States. They have given them a certain liberty, so to speak, to think themselves. They're so programmed. So there's a danger there. And, people already speak about this Google cars and other cars, how dangerous or how reliable will they be. There have been accidents. In Stockholm, they have a bus that goes a certain stretch totally by itself without a driver or anything. It's all free ride. But if you want to go on it. But this seems to work. They have no accident so far. So it can be used for good and for bad, no doubt. They're talking about using robots to help, elderly people, people who are handicapped. It can have good uses and it can have bad uses. Here, this is India. They already, in some of their banks, have these robots helping you on the way in the banks. So, do you want this? Do you want to take out money? Can we help you? Can we do this? Can we give you? Now, Ray Kurzweil, as I said, who's one of these prominent inventors at Google, he thinks that we'll merge. Now, we take Sir Martin Rees, formerly president of the Royal Society in this country, an eminent person in this country. He also speaks of us merging with computers, becoming even more computer perhaps than human. And he believes that we might achieve immortality. He says, if present technical trends proceed unimpeded, we should not dismiss beliefs that some people now living may attain immortality. That's immortality in this world, obviously, not in the next world, so to speak. It's a profoundly anti-religious belief, anti-spiritual belief. Everybody else has spoken about spirituality here. Now, this is something that has nothing to do with spirituality. In fact, it rejects such thinking. Here we have Kevin Warwick, he former working at Warwick in computer, lecturing on computer technology and that sort of thing. He linked a robotic arm to his own system, and so he could move with this robotic arm things in other areas. He made himself a sort of cyborg, literally, and he made his wife as well, actually. She allowed him to do that, strangely enough. So, that speak of other forms of existence, I said, some of them think that we can transfer our minds, our mental capacities to computers, and perhaps even to cyberspace. So they equate personal life with mental life, like John Locke. And they said a biological body is not necessary. We could have a robotic body, for instance, or we could just live in the computer. They do not recognize, in other words, that body and mind are inseparable. So they think you can retain your personal identity while separating yourself from your body. You can still live on as a person you are, so to speak. Obviously, this sort of understanding is miles different from a Christian understanding of the resurrection, which actually, assumes a body, even though a different one. So, sorry, that's the wrong one. Now, this is one of Kurzweil's ideas. So he said, our memories are stored as sequences of patterns in our brain. Well, it's true there are various waves going on in here, electrical currents, of course. These patterns can be translated into computer language, he says. Perhaps, as graphs, or perhaps 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, I don't know. We will pick up every salient detail of a person, he says. Now, I say Paul. Paul is the person at the top there. So, and instantiate Paul in a non-biological body, the computer over there. But what do you get then? He speaks of a mind clone of a person. This one is a mind clone, but it has a body. It has a body made of metal or plastic. The problem is, who is Paul? Are there two Pauls now? It looks like it. It's very strange. So he's a bit worried about that himself. He says he'd rather transform himself in such a way that there weren't two Ray Kurzweil, but only one Ray Kurzweil. So this idea, he says, we could create a software-based human, and just this one, and that eventually, we would do it by transferring more and more and more of ourselves, of our mind, to a computer. So he says, the human experience and memories are the same as symbolical information. Emotions and that sort of thing he doesn't seem to take into account, really. And he said, this can be transferred or translated into computer language. So, and if this computer that we then had at the end of it all seemed to be behaving as if it were conscious, it was so programmed that it seemed, I said programmed because it would be programmed, that it behaved like, Ray Kurzweil, then we would believe it was totally, truly conscious itself. So this is really an ontology of information. It is definitely a reductionist ontology, because a human person can definitely not be reduced to mere information that can be stored in computer language. So, and graphs and symbols are not alive. There's no way. Graph, a symbol, or a software program is not alive. So, but you say the AI may be programmed with voice and face recognition, etc. Yes, it may be like an automatic car, but that is not going to make it alive. I seem to press the wrong one. But then he said, to remain ourselves rather than produce a copy, we may add computer bits, we might be cochlear implants, and we may add, one bit after the other, but all the time retaining all the information we have about our brain, So all of these brain activities, so to speak, that in his mind constitutes the mind, the person, could be retained. And eventually we just have one copy, one little robot, Paul or Ray Kurzweil. And he said, yes, that would be me then. And now I would be living in a totally non-biological body. And this body, of course, could be self-repairing, or that it could, could live on forever possibly, or as he envisaged further, live in the cloud, because you could send all the information to the cloud. So, but is that robot the same as Ray Kurzweil? Is it Ray Kurzweil now in that robot? That's the thing. No. I mean, what makes it tick is hardware and software. It couldn't possibly be conscious. No more than that little automatic Google car there. So obviously this is a creed it's not, if you want to call it a creed, that's totally different from the Christian understanding of body and mind united, totally understanding of our concept of the resurrection as having a different body in a different life. And all they want is to live, what they want more than anything else is to live on forever in this world. I see I have to go fast. We have another lady here, Martin Rees, but she thinks on totally similar lines, but she says, okay, if we don't want a robotic body, why don't we, with our modern genetic, biological technologies and so on, construct a new biological body and put the mind in that? So this would be a body that's sort of empty of the mind, and you try to put this mind in this. Now but if this body, we have this strange body with no mind, but has a brain that's empty, I mean, how would this, it's a tabula rasa. It wouldn't understand anything, because everything we learned about, to understand anything, we have to build up experience gradually. It wouldn't understand language, it wouldn't understand anything. And if, on the other hand, it already contains some memories or some data, well, what would it make all this that was suddenly thrown upon it? It would be sort of like a nightmare, wouldn't it? Or would it, perhaps it would result in, a Jekyll and Hyde, two different personality problem. Anyway, I mean, I say per impossibile, because obviously it's not possible. So they part of this reasoning they actually take from reality. At Yale, or in other places too, they have managed with, recording what goes on in the brain of a person to literally make a pictorial representation of what went on in the person's mind. So this is what the person was looking at. Looks a bit at the goal, but I don't think it's the goal. And then what they managed to reconstruct from the brain activity is the other. So it's from this sort of information, this sort of knowledge, ability, that they take their clue and think that they'll be able to do what they hope to do. Now this, as I said, the theory is very much like that of John Locke, who said, should the soul of a prince carrying with it the consciousness of the prince's past life enter and inform the body of a cobbler, as soon as deserted by its own soul, as soon as the cobbler's body is deserted, anyone or everyone sees that he would be the same person with a prince. So he says, if you transfer the prince's body to the prince's mind to the cobbler's body, the prince would literally now be in the cobbler's body, would he? Well, it's Locke's strange way of thinking. So he again totally identifies the personality with your memories, with your mind, and he thinks if you can transfer that to a different body, well, fine, you'll be in that different body. Bernard Williams says no. Just imagine, in this particular case, instead of a prince, it's an emperor's body with a peasant's personality should be on the throne, and the peasant's body with the emperor's personality in the corner. He said if they changed places. How could a peasant's gruff blasphemies be uttered in the emperor's cultivated tone, sitting in the emperor's body, in other words, and the emperor's witticism and the peasant's growl in the peasant's body? I mean, he says it just is not possible because body and mind are united. You can't dissociate the mind and the mannerism and the way the person behaves generally from his bodily existence. You can't just say, take the mind and fly it into something else. So, and as I said, anyway, what would happen to the world if they literally managed to do what they're hoping to do? Would we all live forever? Would we have no children? Would the world stagnate? Would we all stay young? No. As I envisage, it seems to even think we'd be in computers rather than in our own bodies. It'd be a rather sad existence, I think. What they show is a total lack of Christian hope and faith. And I think, in a way, it's closer to Nietzsche's understanding of the Übermensch than even to eugenics. It's creating a new type of human, greater and bigger than the rest of us. Thank you. It's very weird.